Tired of peeing your pants when you run, jump, or honestly do anything during your day? Well, I'm here to share with you 3 things to bring awareness to for your pelvic floor. And to really understand more about our pelvic floor, ladies, is the base of our entire deep core. So without optimal pelvic floor function, it's really hard to have optimal core strength and honestly optimal health. So number one thing I love to teach about pelvic floor and bringing awareness to is your pelvic floor too tight? So many times we think, oh, we don't know how to activate our pelvic floor, correctly. But many times women, especially if you're a runner or you do a lot of high intensity training or heavy lifting, a lot of those women I find are actually really too tight in their pelvic floor. And we can be too tight on one side versus the other, or in the front of our pelvic floor versus the back of our pelvic floor. So one thing to really start to understand, ladies, and I like to use my diamond as an example, right? If you think of the base of our pelvic floor as the shape of a diamond, not just the shape of a quarter, because so many women think of like it's just the size of a quarter, right? We've been taught how to stop the flow of urine when we go pee, right? And that's how we're doing a Kegel or Kegel, however you want to pronounce it, right? Well, I like to talk about your pelvic floor as your pelvic floor. That is what it is called. That is the musculature of the base of your pelvis. So if our pelvic floor is too tight and restrictive, it can be causing incontinence, the peeing in your pants. It can contribute to hip pain, to pelvic pain, to low back pain, to others when we have just too much restriction through our pelvic floor, which probably for many of you, you're also you're too tight in your glutes, you're gripping in your obliques. It's kind of this full picture. I like to talk about how, our whole body is connected, but a lot of it comes down to our pelvic floor function. Okay, the second thing I like to address with our pelvic floor and bringing more awareness to our pelvic floor is, do you know how to actually release and relax through your pelvic floor? Because we've been taught, right, tighten, 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 squeeze, 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 harder, harder, harder. That actually might be working against you. So I find with my students and clients that when I actually can teach her how to work to release and relax through her pelvic floor, through her entire pelvis and her core, and then we go into number 3, which is really tying it all together, right? Making sure that we actually know how to release and relax through our pelvic floor in a very gentle way. We use a lot of breath to help with this. It's really our breath that's going to help us to connect correctly with our pelvic floor and ultimately our core function, right? So when we start to recognize oh wow, if I can't release through my pelvic floor, then we need to learn how to do that. And then as you start to bring more awareness to your pelvic floor, you may actually start to recognize oh, I don't know how to activate that entire diamond of my pelvic floor. Maybe you only can activate the front of the pelvic floor because you've been practicing doing Kegels your whole life. And it's no fault of your own, it's just what's been taught, right? You go to your OBGYN, and if a conversation even comes up, it's oh, are you doing your Kegels? And then the answer is, yeah, sure. And there's just not enough conversation that goes on in women's health about optimal pelvic floor function. So that's what I'm here to help change, ladies. So if this message is resonating with you, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to check out more of what I teach about pelvic floor function, because it's really important we find this happy balance. And we don't want too strong of a pelvic floor. We don't want too weak of a pelvic floor. We also want a good balance of pelvic floor connection and strength as well. And so I teach more of that through a free pelvic floor download that you can access. You can go find the link below or go to my website, ericazeal.com/pelvic floor. So you can learn so much more about how to properly activate your pelvic floor and more on my website. So thanks for tuning in today.